Hi there, I see some folks joining in. We have our other speakers about to join, so we'll give people a couple minutes to start coming in. Thank you so much to everyone who's in here already. Hi there, folks joining in. We have our other guests coming in. I'm going to add them, so we'll be up and running in just a couple minutes here. Okay, let's see. We have Elle. Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Hi. Okay, and we have our other Indiana folks coming in. There we go. Hi, everybody.
I'm in. Oh, I love this background. Hey, y'all.
Look at that. Okay, and we should have Viv coming in just a second. Thank you so much to everybody who's already in here. We did a little practice earlier today, so I'm proud of us for being able to make it into the Instagram live.
We got it.
Awesome. Hi to everybody who's joining us. Thank you so much for taking part of your day to spend some time with us. Okay. Still got a couple minutes, so we'll just hang out and let more people kind of come in. How have you all been since we saw each other a couple of hours ago?
Good.
Good.
Drinking about a gallon of water right now, so I'm feeling much better now.
Nice. Yeah, I also got my water right here too.
Very nice.
Guys, stay hydrated.
Yes, absolutely.
Like that a little bit. Sorry, I don't want to make anybody seasick.
There we go. Okay, someone I see in the comments is asking where they'll be able to find the recording. At the end of this, we'll save the video to the Abolitionist Social Worker page. So you'll be able to see it there. It should just show up on the grid or the IGTV page. There. And, okay. Awesome. So I think we can be like beyond kind of punctual and just start kicking things off at 7:30. We'll have one more person who's going to be coming in and joining us. Wonderful. Yeah, someone's in there at work and checking in now, but you can check the video of this out later. This is also day one of our mini counter conference on Instagram Live. So you can find a couple other conversations right here, same place, same time, tomorrow and Wednesday. Our comrades in Indiana were also on the Instagram earlier today. So hopefully some of us had a chance to check them out and see a little bit about the actions that they took part in today that they'll also be sharing with us a little bit about. Let me see. Great question. Yeah, how did we meet? We can talk to you a little bit about that in just a second. Add Viv, who is our last conversation member today. There she is. Hello. Okay. Hi. So we can go ahead and kick it off with introductions, I think. Again, for folks still just rolling in right now, this is day one of our mini counter conference on Instagram. This was prompted by a conference that's taking place this week in Indiana called the National Police Social Work Conference. My name's Sarah. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm part of the NAASW, the Network to Advance Abolition Social Work. A couple folks in our group, which is spanned out in a couple different parts of the country, heard about this conference and were like, oh, wow, what's that? What is there something we should say about that? And then through people who knew other people, we got connected with some folks in Indiana who were putting together local actions there, who had started a petition and wrote an amazing letter that we'll link in the comments in a minute as well, as part of their resistance there in Indiana. And so through that, the folks that are here in this Instagram Live kind of came together, and the focus of this first conversation today is going to be about social work should stop policing. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Elle to go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. My name is Elle Roberts. I live here in Indianapolis, Indiana. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm a writer, artist, facilitator, jack of all trades kind of person. Right now I'm an MSW student, and I find new reasons every day to be upset at the world. What brought me here, I've written a lot about abolition from multiple perspectives, specifically hate crimes legislation and the death penalty. And so I'm really excited to engage in this conversation around social work, and specifically the ways in which we police one another is where my interest lies. So I'm super excited to talk to everyone who's here, and to engage with all of you. Hello to everyone who I know who's in the virtual crowd. I'm seeing some familiar names, so thank y'all for being here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I didn't do the same sort of like, why am I here piece, but I just said my name. Like people know me here.
You're doing a great job.
I'm Sarah. I'm born and raised in Minnesota. I'm now 10 years in New York. And I work in defense social work. So I've worked in criminal defense legal settings and currently in an immigration legal defense setting. And I also do work as a therapist. And as my personal and like work awareness about how those systems work and how those systems overlap has grown. I've increasingly also come to understand how social work is such a cog in all of these wheels that criminalize people, that funnel people into systems of punishment, versus serving as a buffer, let alone holding space, facilitating space for people to engage in their own healing journeys, whatever that might look like. So it's a little bit more about what sort of brings me to this space. I think next we'll pass to you, Viv, to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Viviane Guevara. I'm also part of the Network to Advance Abolitionist Social Work. I was born and raised in San Diego, California, but I've lived in unceded Canarsie land for most of the past 20-something years. And I've been a public defender since about 2007. Social work and public defense, and a lot of issues with that work, being, like you said, being a cog in the wheel, being a part of the system, and over time was looking for ways to sustain myself in that work, and kind of fell into restorative justice as a new way to engage with the world, and as a social worker, as a parent, as a community member, and possibly that's going to be the rest of my entire future. So I'm happy to join everybody and learn from everybody today. Thanks everybody for joining in the chat. Appreciate it.
Awesome, thank you. And we'll pass it down now to the rest of our friends in Indiana to introduce themselves.
Hey everybody, I'm Devin Wolf. I use he, they pronouns. I'm with we're calling ourselves the Indiana Abolitionist Social Workers. I'm a MSW student at Indiana University.
Hi, I'm Jackie. My pronouns are they and she, and I'm also an MSW student. and an artist and a maker, and I consider myself a lifelong learner. What brings me to this space is all of y'all for inviting me, and also just like my journey learning about social work. I actually came in wanting to do clinical therapy, and through my own analysis as well as learning from all the perspectives of my peers, I learned about transformative justice, which led me to abolition.
Hello, I'm Grace, she, they. I'm in class with these rad people. Yeah, I think, you know, my background is definitely like in leftist circles. I hate capitalism, I hate prison system, and I'd like to help build something better with y'all. So thanks so much for having me in this little community.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we're going to start first with a little bit of a Q&A with some of the folks in Indiana about what's been happening there in the last week. From there, we're going to hear a little bit more from Elle about the relationship between social workers and policing. And then we'll talk with Vivian and also with all of you in the comments a little bit more about the other ways that social workers already engage in policing in lots of different spaces. Ideally from that, we can take some additional relief and solidarity, knowing that there are other people that are grappling with these same questions and that we can be asking these questions in community, learning from one another, so that in those daily decision-making spaces, we can feel stronger in our ability to advance abolitionist principles instead of what we are probably facing in a lot of the different spaces that we occupy, both in work and personal life. So that's kind of the frame for today. Please ask questions throughout. Please share things in the comments. Yes, the lives will be recorded and they will be available on the Abolitionist Social Work page. There might be some times that comments come through and we don't see them right away. So if there's a question that you wanted to ask, you should also have a little like Q&A bubble that you see there at the bottom that you can put it in if we're missing it in the comments. And with that, we're going to kind of open up the question of, you know, again, to give the little more background here. Currently this week, there is something called the National Police Social Work Conference taking place in Indiana. So we'll ask our friends there in Indiana, how did you all learn about the Police Social Work Conference? What was that experience like?
Yeah, so on this past Saturday, I saw a post about it on Facebook in an abolitionist social work group. And I was like sitting in bed eating pretzels and I like threw up in my mouth a little bit when I saw that. I was really not okay with it. And so I immediately messaged Grace, my fellow anti-capitalist, and I was like, this is not okay. And we definitely agreed that we needed to do something about it, especially with our university providing CEUs for the event. We felt like that was our university basically like condoning what was happening at that conference, even though they've never really put out an official statement on social work's relationship with policing. So yeah, we just kind of rallied our entire networks. It was kind of like a constellation of sorts where it was like our networks and then their networks came in and we managed to connect with people across the country. It was kind of crazy. Like the NAASW folks, you know, folks from other schools of social work. I mean, it was really just kind of incredible how quickly it all came together.
I'm wondering if you can then also share a little more about what's gone into the organizing and collecting yourselves and the resistance efforts that you've engaged in so far. What has that looked like?
I think it's just been kind of a whirlwind of trying to just connect with anyone and anyone who is concerned about the future of social work, about the future of policing. You know, we're at a time in our culture where we're having these conversations, and we're also in this profession that has now been added to the conversation in a way that I frankly didn't expect. And I feel like in some ways we have to hold the line a little bit and talk about not just doing the same thing over and over in a different way. So I know Devin actually managed to send our letter to the entire MSW listserv. Apparently there are no permissions on that, which is what we found. So, and people that I wouldn't have expected to respond have really responded. I think that social justice just makes sense to a lot of people. And I think that it's really shown us, like, because there are a couple of the community projects that the three of us have done together, and people in our chat right now, you know, that letter was a group effort. There are more people than sitting at this table that are participated in it.
Mm-hmm.
There are more people than sitting at this table than have like devoted like their time and energy and passion to this. It is not just the three of us here. And I just like want to give a shout out to our crew over here, who's like, we have a group member who's been actively working on like a crisis response coalition already. We have really rad peers and professors and community members who have been organizing like in or around these issues in harm reduction communities. And I think it really speaks to the way that like we can find like that common ground, we can find those comrades, and the way that we would really like to like continue this moving forward to respond to these issues. I'm sorry, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Yes. And so a couple things that I want to highlight from that, and the Medium link that Cameron just shared in the comments again here, or that you can also find on the Instagram page, shows this letter that you were talking about that was authored by a group of people, and also shows some of the things that have shifted even since you all started organizing there. One question that just came in that I just want to address quickly, someone asked about captions for the recorded version. I think that there's a way that I can add captions when we save it to the page. So that's the plan for that. And the next question I want to move into is sort of what's the response been like? So you talked a little bit about how you all came together, what some of the resistance is that you've put into place. What has the response been like? You mentioned being sort of surprised and about how much you were able to connect with people in other parts of the country. What have the other pieces of response been, maybe from the school locally, while you were all out today at the protest in front of the conference? What's happened there?
Well, luckily, IU School of Social Work retracted the continuing education credits. So that was a small victory pretty early on. So the other two demands in the letter were to end all social work practicum placements in police departments, and to just broadly denounce social work policing altogether and that collaboration. And I'm losing my train of thought right now.
It was okay.
The response that we've gotten. So yeah, it has been amazing to see how many people have rallied, and all the people that we've gotten to meet and having the opportunity to do this. And today at the rally, we had a lot of good vibes. We had a lot of people out for support. I think like 20 or so people came out and marched. And we did have one of the police social workers come out and talk with us. And that was a very interesting interaction. Do you wanna talk more about that? I kind of came into that interaction later, so maybe Devin can speak more to that.
Yeah, so we were sitting outside the entrance to the conference, being loud and agitating, and we had a police social worker come out. I don't know if she was someone who was speaking at the conference, but she was very passionate about the work she does, and she seemed really kind of offended that we would be in opposition to that. Kind of the verbatim words that she used was that we were damaging the progressive movement by protesting police social work. So it was interesting to see kind of how far folks have to be into this narrative in order to actually be a police social worker, and how embedded they are, not just into the police department, but the culture that perpetuates these ideas. And on the flip side of that, we also had a lot of really good interactions with folks where we would just ask them in good faith, what brought you here? Why are you here today as a social worker? And a lot of folks seem to understand that the police, maintain inequity and enact violence on our communities. They just thought that in order to reduce that, their only option was to work with the cops. And it was they just hadn't really envisioned a world where they could, work outside of that system. So it was we had the people that were far off that, we really couldn't have a good faith conversation with. And we had folks that were really open to the idea and like having a good faith discussion about it, which was really encouraging.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. Do you have anything else you want to add to that, Grace?
No, I just think like going forward, I have a lot of thoughts and questions about like how to engage people again, like who only see like one way of doing things. But again, I think the response has shown that there are a lot of people on a lot of different points on the spectrum, and there is a way to draw those people in. And there are a lot of people, like I said, there are a lot more of like us, I think, than we realize. Like I said, there are a bunch of people who have like been really crucial to this whole effort right now that we just didn't have room to pack into Jackie's dining room. I just want to have those dialogues more and more going forward and draw people in, find a way to do that.
Mm-hmm. An interesting theme that I saw as we were talking to some of the social workers that engaged with us, as well as I've seen in some of the broader public around police social work, is that that social workers feel like police are making them feel safer as they respond to crisis. And I think that that's a really interesting take on, because as social workers, yes, we do need to keep ourselves safe, but also we are working to keep everybody safe. So I thought that was an interesting theme.
I'm gonna check in with a couple of the questions that came in. There's a question about how do you talk to people who don't see anything wrong with police social work? And then someone also asking specifically in Indiana, folks can share a little bit more about the context of policing and surveilling in communities. Some of that maybe folks want to jump in and talk about right now. I think that some of that also might be addressed through what you're going to talk to us a little bit about, Elle, as well as Viv, and really highlight the ways that also social workers are already, even outside of police departments, so involved in policing surveillance. Something that really was part of what brought the folks at NAASW together last summer was the way that social work was being talked about as an alternative to policing, and or the ways that the partnership between social workers and police was being floated as the thing that will make policing not violent, not racist, not oppressive, when social work as a profession is already all of those things. And so then you add that to another profession that is all of those things and expect it to be something different. It doesn't really kind of add up that way. So I think we'll go into more of those things. Anyone that wants to jump in right now and respond more, please go for it.
Yeah, and like regards to like having conversations with folks, I felt like today I was able to have like some really like good faith conversations with people. I think if you really just broach it from like a place of understanding and like using those social work micro skills, you know, extending your empathy to folks, like, you know, like how did you reach this conclusion? And then like once you understand how people reach that conclusion, you can kind of begin to poke the holes in it. Like it doesn't really make sense to like partner with an agency or a force or a system that like hurts the communities you're working with just because it'll hurt them less. It makes more sense to just eliminate that system altogether. So yeah, I really think just like meeting people where they're at, which is something I don't think we do often with like other social workers. We're so used to like doing that in like our work, especially like micro social workers. But yeah, really just like extending that empathy, I think is huge.
Absolutely. Because like a lot of us that are social workers are a part of the oppressed communities that we are also seeking to help.
I want to jump in on this question and say I want to echo something that Grace said earlier, that there are more of us social workers who are about abolition and than we think that there are. But also I think in terms of relationship building and coalition building, something that I'm growing increasingly aware of and weary of even inside of how this situation unfolded, looking at how folks who are social workers who are on our side effectively disagreeing vehemently with the position of abolition. And it's so interesting to kind of see the lines drawn in the sand, where on so many other issues we align and we agree and we can collaborate on. But on this is kind of a step too far, or have you actually considered it? And I just want to caution us, I think here in this space and beyond this space, and for myself even included in that we're not on the same side with folks who are not about abolition. We are not on the same side with folks who do not understand how violent policing is, and who do not understand the role that social workers play in policing inside of our work every single day. We are not on the same side, and we have to be clear about that. We have to be clear about our political lines here. Otherwise, it is so easy to kind of see the way that even defund police became a whole different talking point because of our lack of clarity, because folks who we allowed to speak on these issues were not clear on where we stand and why defund is important towards abolition. And so I think it's important to note what we do have in common in terms of like principled struggle. But I think it is important to remember and to say very clearly and often, we are not on the same side. This is not a both sides kind of conversation. We're not here to give a mic to people who do not believe in abolition. There's no both sides. So I just want to say that there.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's also making me think about this conversation that I've had a couple of times in the last week of like, where's the line that we draw? And someone's asking a question in there about people who work in defense social work. Like, how do you navigate that you're actively working to negotiate plea deals for people, which I think we can talk about a little bit later on. And I work in defense social work, right? And I look sometimes at like, what's my line? When am I actually on the other side of my own line? And I think that that's a really important question for me to ask myself, and also I think keeps me positioned in a way that is more aligned with my values when I'm engaging with people that I see as being really far on the other side of the line, because sometimes I'm also on the other side of my own line. And it's about what's the learning that I'm doing to bring myself back? What's the community that I'm building so that people can help me notice that and bring me back? Because none of us just do right all the time from there. So 3 of the questions that came in, one is, as mandated reporter, how do you not engage police if you need to call EMTs? Second question, I want to do crisis response work. Is my only option to work with the police? What are other options for doing crisis response work? And then the third question here is, what do you say about social workers who work as POs and see themselves as doing prevention work? So I'm going to list out those questions. You do not have to respond to all of them. We can have the conversation, but I think some of that might intersect with this next section anyway.
I mean, I don't feel like I have all of the resources at the tip of my tongue, but Cam, if you're still there in the chat, if you could post the resource that you just circulated a few hours ago. There's people on the ground in lots of different places that are now offering hotlines or resource lines to not call the police. Call us instead and we'll talk through what to do. So if you could drop that there, but they're everywhere. And even on Instagram, I think after this, we'll post some more resources of where to go to find alternatives. Because definitely when now I'm like, I don't know what to do either. Honestly, truthfully, being an abolitionist is also a choice. And for a lot of us, including me, I did not grow up in a world without police. I grew up in cities. I didn't grow up somewhere where there wasn't police or where that wasn't the option. I didn't grow up in a world without prisons and jails. So it takes the imagination of people to create those spaces. And people have been doing it for years and years and years. And they're out there. But what do I say about POs who are doing prevention work? No, they're not. I mean, again, those are different. I guess there's different POs all over. I don't know every single PO out there. I don't know every single office. I know the POs that I work with, because I do work with them. And a lot of them say they do reentry work also. And it's, if you're forcing somebody to do something, That's not reentry work. If you're not offering support, if you're only giving people resources that you want them to engage with, that's not support. If you're saying, no, you can't work at this job because it's off the books, that's not support. If you're acting as a mandated reporter, as a PO, you're policing. You're policing, and if you're working, you know, a lot of POs will call themselves an arm of the court. They are an arm of the court. They're law enforcement. They carry guns, they carry badges, and they have the ability to arrest people. So no, it's not preventive work. There might be, you know, who knows? I don't know. I don't have the language for the POs that do support people and who don't call don't call the state and don't, you know, get the people that they're supervising in trouble. I don't know those POs. But if they're out there, you know, I hope they can share with us how they do the work that they do, and not get in trouble or not get fired, because that is their mandate and they have to do it. And I would say, you know, just on the where else are social workers policing, I think people have named it child welfare workers, or people who work in the family regulation system for ACS or whatever it's called, where people are located. That's policing. Working in, some of even the reentry organizations that I know of, the social workers there are, you know, calling me or calling POs and saying they didn't show up. I mean, anytime you're making a call that's going to get someone in trouble in some form or fashion, you're supervising, you're policing a person. Anytime you think it's your responsibility to tell somebody what they should do to not get in trouble, you're policing. So, I mean, and those are individual choices that you make as social workers. I make those decisions too every day. I'm not going to do this. Thankfully, my job is not on the line for a lot of the things I say no to, but for the folks that are in jobs where your job is on the line, I can imagine that's a very difficult choice. And it goes towards one of the questions in the chat, which is, you know, are we talking about abolishing social work? Are we talking about working ourselves out of jobs? And I think the answer is yes. And pushing back on a lot of the things that we're required to do. I think that's where the fight is. It's not, but it's fight, like what I was talking about licensing earlier. The fight is not everybody get your clinical license to me so that we can be better clinical social workers. The fight is, why do we have licensing at all?
Oof. Yes.
Snaps for that. Amen.
Mm-hmm. Can I, to your point, Viv, real quick, something that I notice a lot, I think in this political moment, I've noticed it more than ever, but it's been a pattern of a thing where I think the folks, someone that I really enjoy, Tamara Knopper, says this all the time, like part of the work is knowing who to be mad at. And the folks that we need to be mad at are co-opting our language, our language, our liberatory language, in which we are seriously choosing our words carefully toward making sure that we are not doing harm, and beyond not doing harm, actually coming alongside our clients and following the fact that they are the expert in their own lives. I will just say that. And to see our language be co-opted in this way is another kind of manifestation of that exact political clarity that we were talking about earlier, where we're seeing the words mean something else in a different context. And so it's just another area where we still have to continue to be politically clear, even around the words that we are using, and calling out the words that are being used by the folks that we need to be mad at.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that this is bringing up for me, and listening to this, is thinking of this concept of heightening the contradictions. And I'm like, who is it that I heard that from? I think it's Fred Hampton that talked about that. And that when someone in the comments here was talking about at my job, people love to joke about working themselves out of a job, but how does that really play out, right? And it's I think in social work school, we're told that we're supposed to want to work ourselves out of a job. And so a lot of us develop the way to say that really casually, but it's scary to sit at the contradiction of what that means, right? And I am somebody who's actively working towards getting my clinical license, right? And so it's what are the contradictions that I'm sitting at? And can I sit with them, and not only sit with them, but can I heighten them? Because that's such a big part of the consciousness raising process, of the politicization process. And if we can't keep heightening the contradictions, we're probably not really going to be doing anything about them. And I think that we can often think that sitting at the contradictions of something, that's a conflict oriented position to take. Yeah. But I think that that's how you actually have conflict resolution, is to heighten the contradictions and to be able to sit there together. Like, that's how you move through conflict. But again, it's one of those scripts that was flipped. And so we don't have a great skill set for that. And that's one of the other things cut out for me. This conversation that has been so great. And we're coming up to the end of the hour. There's been so many amazing resources shared in the comments here as well. So many wonderful questions asked. I feel very appreciative to everyone that has been a part of this conversation. By speaking, by commenting, by reading the comments, by being present, people who will watch this later, people who are having these conversations in all the different spaces. And in their own heads, waiting for people that they can have these conversations with too. Thank you so much. I'll check in and see if there's any kind of last final words that anyone here wants to share in our sign off today.
Just want to give a lot of love to everyone who has contributed to this space. Yeah, y'all are my people, and I'm glad to be here with you.
I feel the same. Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone in the chat and everyone who showed up to listen and engage. Appreciate everybody.
Yes, we appreciate you all. Thank you so much.
And you can come back and see us again here tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Tomorrow, we're going to hear from Joyce McMillan with JMAC for Families, Key Williams. It's going to be an amazing conversation about building safety through abolition. On Wednesday, we're going to hear from some other folks from our network, some folks from Social Service Workers United, the Dean of the Houston School of Social Work. Someone asked in the chat earlier if folks from Houston were going to be involved. Yes, on Wednesday. So please come back and join us in those conversations as well. All right. And thank you all so much. And with that, off we go.
Thank y'all. Good night.
Good night.